highlights from the first 4 games of the last 16 knockout matches. All the darts action from Wolverhampton tonight at 11:05. That's after tonight's ITV News with Mark Austin.
Tonight, astonishing new revelations about the Inland Revenue's database disaster. Everyone's child benefit details were sent to the National Audit Office, even though only a small proportion of that had been requested. Tonight's system failure, how cost-cutting contributed to 25 million people's personal details going missing.
It was the Revenue who, against the wishes of the National Audit Office, insisted on sending them all this information.
We've also heard claims that the decision to send all the data was taken at a higher level than originally thought. Our political editor has the full story tonight. Also on the programme, they've blown it, a goalkeeping howler as England failed to qualify for Euro 2008. The first TV interview with a family in shock after 2 bodies were found at their house in Margate.
I can't believe a human being could do something like that.
And America's big dilemma, a special report on the great debate across the Atlantic, whether to strike against Iran or not. Good evening. A junior official was to blame, they said. All the rules to stop it happening were already in place, they said. But ITV News has learned that actually cost-cutting at the Inland Revenue was a significant factor in the disappearance of 2 data disks containing 25 million people's confidential details. The Revenue had not been asked for bank account numbers. All the National Audit Office wanted was names and national insurance numbers. But we were told today a senior manager said it was too burdensome to separate the information out. Our political editor Tom Bradby is in Downing Street tonight. Tom.
Well, Mark, good evening from a very rainy Downing Street, and I know it is a terrible cliche, but the weather does rather match the political mood tonight. Why? Well, the government has insisted all along that this was just a mistake by one junior official, but we revealed on our evening news earlier tonight that it actually is beginning to look more like system failure, and it's looking like the Revenue is trying to save a bit of money. This story was already bad enough for the government, but tonight the case of the missing files took a turn for the worse. Far from just being the work of a junior official, it looks now as though the Revenue took a decision at the highest level to send out all this information because it was just too troublesome to separate out, or disaggregate, to use the precise term, all the really sensitive stuff.
What happened is the National Audit Office, in order to do its audit, asked for very narrow information. All they needed was the names and national insurance numbers. The Revenue said to them at a higher level, not a junior clerk level, that it would be too burdensome and not cost effective to disaggregate the information. Therefore, it was the Revenue who, against the wishes of the National Audit Office, insisted on sending them all this information.
So, just to recap, the National Audit Office wanted these files to check up on benefit fraud, but it only asked HM Revenue and Customs for a very limited amount of information. Officials there simply requested names and national insurance numbers, but what they got were names, children's names, addresses, dates of birth, child benefit numbers, national insurance numbers, and even bank account and building society details. Why? Lee claims it was just too expensive to sort it all out.
The National Audit Office were told it was too burdensome and not cost effective to disaggregate it. And I believe the reason why the Inland Revenue said this is because this work has now been contracted out to EDS, which is a private company. And I suspect that EDS would have said to the Inland Revenue, if you want us to encrypt this or if you want us to disaggregate the information, we will charge you more.
In the Commons, Gordon Brown fared well to begin with, but when he said the Tories had opposed extra funding for the Revenue, David Cameron savaged him.
On a day when the government has lost the details of 25 million people, to try and blame the opposition is frankly pathetic. Do you know what people want from their Prime Minister on a day like this? Is for him to stand up, show some broad shoulders, be the big man, and take some responsibility.
I
said right at the beginning, I apologise for what has happened. Everybody who is a recipient of child benefit should know that we will take every proper procedure now to improve the working of HMRC and to improve the working of every government department and agency.
This has been tonight a story of fast-moving twists. The danger for the government has certainly not passed yet. Tom Bradby, ITV News at Westminster.
The man responsible for checking that our personal details are properly protected has long been asking for greater powers. Today, with data on 25 million people missing, the Prime Minister finally conceded the Information Commissioner should be allowed to make spot checks on any organisation that stores personal information. Plenty do, of course. Our UK editor Angus Walker looks at what they've got on us and whether we'll be better protected in the future.
The police still searching at the child benefit offices in Washington, the largest national information breach and national investigation. ITV News understands that the official who burnt the CDs has been removed from his post but has not officially resigned. The government's Information Commissioner has today been given new authority to carry out spot checks on data protection. Just last month, ministers said he didn't need those powers.
Ironically, we published research only last week which shows that the population at large take data protection very seriously. 9 out of 10 are not sure that organisations are treating their personal information with sufficient security. A very large proportion of the population say that data protection is now one of the most serious social concerns.
No wonder we're increasingly concerned. Whitehall now holds more details about us than ever before. Take the growing National Identity Register. It's one of the government's most controversial databases, vital for a future ID card scheme. It holds all kinds of personal information, names, addresses, dates and places of birth, but also biometric data such as iris patterns and facial images. Then there's the UK DNA database. Not everyone's on it, of course, but it is the biggest of its type in the world. There's also patients' records, which the government aims to put online onto a mass database. And then there's Contact Point,